why did I decide to shoot something on the Canon T2i in 2018? Why use a camera that for all intents and purposes is so outdated? It's almost 9 years old at this point, shoots 1080p at 24 frames per second and a whopping 60 frames per second at 720p when I have more accessible, high quality gear available to me. I'm shooting on the Sony a7S Mark II right now. I own the Canon C300 Mark II. Why shoot something on such an old, outdated camera? I was talking to a cinematographer I know I've worked with a few times in Toronto. He does lots of high-end agency commercials. He's been doing it for years. And we were talking about how it's stupid for people to buy cameras. But what he meant was it's stupid for new filmmakers and new cinematographers and new camera people to go out and spend a ton of money on cameras that they may not be able to make a return on investment yet. At least that's what I'm gonna tell myself so that I feel better about my life choices. When you're starting out as a camera person or as a filmmaker, it's tempting to buy high-end gear. You see so many YouTubers shooting on the newest mirrorless cameras or high-end like RE Alexas or Red Epics, and you're just like, you fetishize it. And as a filmmaker, I have gear acquisition syndrome. I'm always trying to stay up to date on what the newest gear is, what the newest camera is, lenses, drones. But even though nowadays becoming a filmmaker and being able to invest in gear is more affordable and accessible than ever as better cameras become cheaper, it's still prohibitively expensive when you're starting out. When I began my business in 2014, all I had money for was a computer. I decided to focus on editing, and that's what I spent my money on. It wasn't until about 3 years later that I invested in the Sony a7S Mark II, and that was after I'd started getting clients that could help justify these expenses. And just 2 months ago is when we got the Canon C300. It took us like almost 6 years to be able to pull the trigger on this camera. And it's not just me, I co-own that with somebody, so it's not just my camera. If it was just me alone, I wouldn't have put the money up for it. I've seen videos on YouTube where people are telling you, you know, you should, if you're going out on a travel shoot, you should have 2 cameras. And it's like, no, don't do that. It's so expensive. Like, if you're not making money from clients to pay for these cameras to justify these expenses, then you're just sinking money. So that's why I decided to give myself these limitations. I gave myself half an hour to shoot it. I had to use basically only gear that would have been accessible to me when I was a film student back in like 2010, 2011. I used the Canon T2i, Canon 50mm f1.8, the Canon 24mm f2.8 pancake lens, a tripod that I think was left at my house on a student film shoot back in like 2011 that's maybe $30 at like Walmart or Best Buy, and a Yongnuo YN360 light wand, which is usually about $100, and then you need like a battery for it for 40 or 50 bucks as well. So basically less than $1,000 worth of gear and half an hour to shoot. I'm not a cinematographer. When I get hired for gigs, I hire a cinematographer. I know it's not my strength. I can do the bare bones lighting and shooting. I've lit this and I'm shooting this, but even that's not that great. But I know the basics, and I wanted to show that even in the hands of someone remotely competent like myself, you can produce decent looking footage on cameras that are all outdated or that have low specs. If you're a new filmmaker who's just producing content for YouTube, or you're maybe finding clients that are producing little corporate videos for Facebook or their YouTube page, you don't need to spend $10,000 on a camera and lens kit. There's no reason to take on financing, no reason to go into debt. A crappy camera in the hands of a professional cinematographer will look way better than an amazing camera in the hands of an amateur. I've seen amazing footage shot on like the 5D Mark II and garbage footage shot on a Red Epic. The camera does not make the cinematographer makes the camera. I know another cinematographer, he's done films that are on Netflix, he's done big high-end agency commercials. I met him on a Gatorade commercial project about 8 months ago, and he doesn't have a high-end cinema camera. He rents one. When he gets hired for a film, he goes out and rents an RE Alexa, or the production rents it, because they're gonna pay for it anyways. He owns some lenses, he brings those out on shoots, but in terms of his own cameras, I think he only had like a Sony a6300 he brings around. And if they're hiring him for an agency commercial, he'll rent a camera. There's no need for him to buy it. If you're shooting something for a small business that's gonna go on their Facebook or their YouTube, you don't even need to shoot past like 720p. I mean, some of those shots in that little T2i sequence were 720p because they were 60 frames per second. The average consumer, people who are not into filmmaking, will not be able to tell if something was shot on a Canon Nifty 50 that cost $150 or an RE Ultra Prime 50 that cost $25,000. They have no gauge as to that. They are looking for good... Oh no, my light died. One sec. Problem with battery powered lights. Is the content good? Is it entertaining? Am I learning something? And is it competently shot? If you're remotely competent, you'll make even the lamest of cameras shine. So if you feel like you learned something today, if you like that little sketch or piece off the top, if you feel like you learned something about running your small business, hit the subscribe button, the thumbs up, the bell, do all the things YouTubers tell you to do at the end of every video, and I will see you next time. I got up and left for a fact. I'm actually gonna be sitting here for a while, so yeah.